everyone. Welcome to our panel from Concept to Cardboard. I am the moderator for today, Mandi Hutchinson, also known as the Board Gaming Pinup Girl. And we have so many awesome guests today. I'm so excited to be talking with them because this is actually almost like the second time I've met them. So we just want to jump right into it and talk about art, illustration, graphic design, all new to me. So let's meet everybody that's on the panel today. So we are going to start with Anita Osburgh, creative director at Renegade Games. She directs the creative department that includes their amazing team of graphic designers and production artists. And all Renegade commission illustrations, well, they go through Anita. So that is the person to talk to. So welcome, Anita. Thank you for being with us today. Anita also does. Yes, so we're so happy to have you. And of course, you've worked on a lot of games with Renegade, Blood of an Englishman, Ex Libris, Flatline, Lotus, Sentient. The list goes on. There's so many. So thank you so much. Then we have, I've just learned to pronounce the name properly, Micho. I hope I said that correctly. And Micho is an illustrator from Macedonia. Is that Micho? Yeah. Okay, so I got it right. Yes. Good. Likes to draw, enjoys comics, toys, and you probably have recognized a lot of his work: Architects of the West Kingdom, Raiders of the North Sea, Paladins of the West Kingdom, one of my favorites, and many others. Welcome. We know this is late for you. Thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. If I pass out, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's make it more interesting.
Yes, it will be very fun.
Exactly. Next down the line, we have Erik Hitler, who's an illustrator, went from video games to animation and then to board games. You may recognize some of his work in Junk Orbit, Terror Below, and I know this isn't a Renegade Games, but Yukon Airways, which was actually designed by a personal friend. So very nice work on those games. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And then we have Kwanchai Moria, another illustrator of tabletop games and children's books. Some games that you might have seen illustrations by Kwanchai are Flip Ships, Kepler 3042, Overlight RPG books, and other games from other designers, as one of my favorites, Pret-a-Porter. So thank you for being here, Kwanchai.
Here, Mandi.
Awesome. All right. Now you can notice I'm really peppy. Everyone's very calm. So we're going to make sure we get that energy up. Lots of questions for me. And thank you to everybody in the audience for joining us today. Have those questions ready because we are going to have some time for you to ask some questions to not so much me, but to our lovely panel of illustrators. So have those ready and we will have a period for you to ask that. So before we, get off the rails here, let's jump right into it. So art, illustration, graphic design, this is all new to me specifically. I don't really know much about the process. I know I review board games, but I don't know. So let's maybe start with that. What is an illustrator, graphic designer? Like, are those all things that work together? What is the same thing? Give us some help here. Let's start with that.
Do you want me to jump in?
Anybody jump in? Why not? Come on, this is what you do. So any perspective is welcome.
We have, I don't know, we work with so many amazing illustrators and so many amazing graphic designers, and it's so fun to finally see their faces here because normally it's just through texting and emails and stuff. So this is really fun for me. But I would define, and you guys can definitely correct me, but I would define an illustrator more as a fine artist and a storyteller, and a graphic designer crosses over because a good graphic designer can actually illustrate, but they do a lot of the functional aspects of the game and actually get it press ready, do icons, they draw whatever they need to draw to make sure that the game looks good.
Yeah.
It makes it work.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
To agree?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, because a lot of people would describe themselves as illustrators but not graphic designers. I think I fall into that category. Definitely illustrator first. And yeah, I always enjoy working with a good graphic designer because I know that they are handling the aspects of the game that are going to make it playable and like add that player legibility. And then what I do is support the tone or the theme of the game as much as I can, and create all that supplementary stuff.
Yeah, I feel like as an artist, at least for me, I fall in with Erik. Like, build the raw building blocks of the thing, but it's really important to have a good graphic designer that can take that and make it meld all together as a product that finally like hits the table. So if it's anything that needs to be drawn or painted, that's me. But in terms of like any kind of text, symbols, icons, organizing it, getting it onto punch boards, all the crazy behind the scenes stuff that you don't really think of, that is often the graphic designer. And often graphic designers are also project managers in terms of keeping an eye on deadlines and overall theme and making sure everything blends together to deliver a product that gets the mechanics across right.
Okay, so it's important roles. And yeah, go ahead.
I just like to draw.
Oh, right. That's
Put it. Yes. Here, when we work on something, usually we don't have that much, professionals like designer, illustrator, icon maker, and stuff like that. So when you work here in Macedonia, at least it was like that some time ago. It still is. When they hire you for something, they hire you for everything. Even if do you know computer? Oh, you know computers. Can you install Windows on my computer and stuff like that? But in the moment, because I can choose, I choose to be illustrator because I like to draw again poorly, not like these two gentlemen here. But there is not much to explain. We are making magic from series of boards. When they tell you to draw a dragon, I draw a dragon. There isn't much philosophy for me, at least, in that. And I try to do it on time, and I rarely succeed.
That's okay. It's worth it, though. It's worth it when we see the final product.
Right?
There's crossover. There's crossover on both ends because then it has to work in game ultimately for our industry. So the illustrator has that in mind as they're drawing component pieces and game boards and stuff. And even if it starts with the graphic designer making a wireframe template, for example, then it goes to the illustrator. He does his part, or he does his part. And then it goes back to the graphic designer, and then the graphic designer gets to make whatever tweaks to make sure it all works, sizes it, clones things in or out, whatever. I always feel like, you guys give us your art, and then we just kind of do what we want with it, with everyone's approval, of course. But
the handoff when, as an illustrator, I hand off to a graphic designer, it's always like, you put your hands over your face and just like, I'm so sorry. Here's all the raw stuff. You deal with it, because like it's often, because it has to be finagled and sussed into position, and it's a lot of little things, and you have to have like a keen eye on the overall project. So it's always a little bit scary to hand off to the graphic designer, just because you're like, it's essentially as an artist, my job is like, I'm done, yeah. It's always good to have a really, really good graphic designer. Like, I feel like it's the most important job on a project, to be honest.
Really?
I'm always a little
goes back and forth.
Yeah. So why do you say that, or do you all agree with that? I mean, I don't know. And I know, Dmitry, you were saying that it's mostly like you kind of do most of it versus, some of you all, work with it. Do you find, I mean, and I don't know how much this question is going to affect you, but for everybody else, or you could please feel free to give your opinion. How does that work?
Let me be clear. I really don't know how the board games work. I haven't played none. It's a little strange. Sorry, somebody has to draw them, and I really don't have. I have time, But when I generally try to play one board game, there is, have to read rules and stuff like that, and it requires a lot of time from me, and I haven't played one game yet. So I'm planning to, because I have a lot now, and I know a lot of people that are working on them. But again, I usually say that a good game is a product of everybody that works on it. Designer, game designer, illustrator, and stuff like that. Because if the illustrations are awesome and the game is not so awesome, I don't think that it will be. I will buy it because I love good art. But what I see from the players, somebody will probably not buy it. So I think that the games are a product of everybody who is working on them.
Right. No, and that's
And
a really
especially,
valid point.
yes. And again, when I do my illustration, then I'm free to go and drink coffee, and go out and play on PlayStation, and eat and watch movies and collect toys.
Ah, you're a
So
PlayStation now. Huh?
yes, I have like 15 or 20 minutes a day to play PlayStation or Fortnite with my son. So
Oh.
quick shooters and stuff like that.
Nice.
And let the
With
designer pass with
Illustrator,
the design and the fonts and stuff like that.
Right.
the
Oh, that's
I can
good.
appreciate that though, because I also didn't play board games really before I started illustrating for them, but I was relieved to find that a lot of the kind of art principles from animation and from video games kind of transfer over. Like it's really just, again, that's why the graphic designer. I feel bad handing off the work to them because I'm like, okay, now you have to actually make it work. Like I gave some, hopefully I set up my files in a clean way or something like that, but they have to actually put it together, and that feels like not fun. But I do feel a little bit guilty, yeah, being the one that draws the dragons and that sort of thing. Yeah, it's definitely the fun part, in my opinion.
I think, Anita, you had something you wanted to jump in and say, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say that the Illustrator really sets the tone for the game, the visualization. And at least for Renegade, the way we have it set up, we really follow the Illustrator's lead and see what they're going to do with it. And then we get all the other assets to kind of follow suit. So we specifically find illustrators that meet our theme and the stylization that we're looking for specifically. And then once they get started, like on the box cover illustration, it just kind of sets the tone for the whole game.
Okay. So when the game starts, so is it the designers come, they say, oh, this is the game, we signed the game, this sounds awesome. Okay, we don't really like the artwork, or hey, we want to change the direction of the artwork. And then you kind of have in your mind, oh, I want to go to this specific illustrator because I like their aesthetic, or I think they can, really bring to life what we're trying to do. Like, what are the steps after that happens, or is that the right order? And I guess maybe, Anita, you might know this a bit more, but I would like the others to kind of jump in to say, hey, like, this is when we actually come on board, and these are some of the things that we can contribute.
Yeah, with Renegade, the development team might be working on something for months before it even gets to even me or anybody on the creative side. So once it gets through the development team and they figure out, okay, here's the gameplay mechanics, we got it pretty solid. This is the theme we're kind of thinking of. It kind of comes to my desk, and they might have some illustrators in mind, they might not. And we do a search, make sure that everyone's on board with the style that we're looking for. And then that's when the graphic designer and the illustrator kind of get put on the project side by side. If there's any wireframe templates that need to be made or size determinations, we do that hopefully before it goes to the illustrator. And hopefully there aren't changes after that, just to make everything efficient. But there's always cases where something changes halfway through, either because the gameplay changes or something doesn't work or doesn't fit in the box, or there's just a lot of considerations. But normally it's a pretty smooth process. And once the illustrator finishes their work, it goes to the graphic designer. They do their adjustments, lay it out, and then after that it goes to a production artist who will actually put the rulebook together and do any card variations, all the text, all the little numbers that change in the corner of your cards, all that stuff, all the variables, icons that change out, and then it goes to print.
So for the rest of you, when do you get that call that says, you've got your golden ticket, we're going to Hollywood? Like, when do you know that you're on the game, you're doing the things? Like, when does that happen, and how much input do you have into all of it?
I don't get a call because it will probably be really expensive if you use it the regular way. So I usually get a mail, and I'm trying to persuade everybody to give me relatively simple mail. We need 10 illustration with orcs. Can you do them?
Yeah.
And I will say yes. So you have, beside me, that even you two have more free time to do whatever you do. And I try to keep the things as simply as possible. Because
Yeah.
as I listen to you, everybody, you do again. You have very organized and complex process, and I'm trying to avoid it. Just to have time for reading comics and stuff like that.
I love it. That's awesome.
I am not organized. Just for the record, not organized very much at all. So more like you, Micho.
Yeah, I can't
What
say
about
for
you,
how
Erik?
organized I am. Well, yeah. When we were chatting the other day, we were talking about how many things we can elegantly handle at a time, and it's like I think maximum for me, it's like 2 or 3 projects because otherwise things just start getting really, really confused. But that's one thing I like about board games is because the schedules, we usually have a decent amount of time to work on things, so it's possible to have a kind of variety in the day-to-day of working where it's like, okay, I'll work on this project today because I need to deliver it on Friday, and then I'll work on that one tomorrow. For it keeps things fresh and helps break up the working from home monotony a good bit.
Yeah, I think
Right.
I think board games are awesome for that thing exactly, Erik. The idea that your projects can be so diverse and you can jump around from theme to theme, and it feels like different worlds that you're pivoting to in the course of one day.
Mm.
But yeah, to answer your question, Mandy, about getting that golden call, that golden ticket. For me, I mean, like I've done quite a few projects up to this point, and even now, like it's so hard to say no to any project because every single one feels unique and exciting. It's a whole box that can be opened, and each one feels so. Even if you're doing the same theme, like Orcs again, for example, or another sci-fi game, there's no two things that are totally the same, and I feel like there's a lot of creativity in the industry right now in general, where people want to pivot and do fresh things, like at a like at the forefront,
Mm-hmm.
I know that for myself, I will go to buy a board game and I'm like, oh, I know Quanchai did that art. I'm just going to buy that game because Quanchai did it, or Erik did it, or the Micho did it. Do you know what I mean? So, do you find that, like, I mean, you all have a very, I can tell. I can go look at a game and I'm like, yeah, I know that Micho did that. I know that Quanchai did that. Do you find that sometimes it's hard to get out of, and I don't even know how to phrase this properly, but people know you for the type of work that you do. Do you try and change it up a little bit, or do you kind of stay within the same line of the art that you do because that's what you're known for? And in the board game industry, I don't know if people like that consistency, which I think they do because they recognize you, or do you feel like you always have to reinvent or do something different?
I
feel
like
like
I
that.
found that.
Everybody wants to go. Okay, so how about we go? We'll go with Micho. The Micho, you go first.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay. I really like when they know me. It used to be called a style. I collect comics from the artists I like, and if I have too much Frank Miller comics or too much Simon Bisley comics, it's okay with me because I buy them anyway. So it feels nice when you're known. And in the case you don't know who the artist is, so it's always there is a signature there. And just as Eric told sometime a couple of seconds ago, I usually don't work only on board games. I usually work on comics and animation too. So I am handling a couple of projects a day, and that's why I have to go to sleep relatively early today.
Doing a lot, exactly. And do those projects probably take more time, or you know what I mean? Like, I don't know the difference between a video or comics or board games, but I'm assuming the time to work on each of them is
The
different.
the animated movie we are working here on, full length animated 2D movie,
Oh,
we are
wow.
making it for like 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
But again, you have to understand that you're coming for the environment and countries and stuff like that. You have history in this, in board games, in animation and stuff like that. Here on Balkans, we don't actually have a lot of history. I didn't know the board games existed 5 years ago. I usually thought about it like Monopoly and stuff like that. And it was a new uh, thing for me when I discovered that there are a lot of games, there is a lot of wonderful artists and stuff like that. So again, this is relatively new to me, and I'm working again not just on board games but on the children book series, movies and comics and stuff like that. Because I started as a comic book artist, and by accident I started to work in advertising company, feel as a designer too. I thought that they were making an animated movie, and I asked for the job, and they gave me the job, and I was designer because it was by mistake. And from there on, down one of the board game illustrators by chance, not by. And it's great. Don't get me wrong. The toys and the swords and the stuff, they are really expensive. Especially again, on Balkans, we don't have, especially in Macedonia, we don't have a lot of board games shops and toy shops and stuff like that. Actually, we have only one, and it's they are doing their best.
Right.
It's extra hard. It is extra hard for me to have a shelf like this. I really have a great big studio, and it's full of comics and toys, and you can understand that I put extra effort to get all the stuff here instead.
That's awesome.
Micho, do you feel like that makes it easier to approach the board game work that you have not seen a lot of other board game stuff? Because I thought that was interesting when I started doing it. I hadn't played a lot, so I was just kind of thinking of them in terms of video game icons and things like that. Do you feel like it was a natural thing switching from comics into board games?
I haven't switched. I do that all the time, and I'm really happy that I work at home. My studio is in my basement, and I work at home all day. My kids and wife are on the upstairs, and I don't see them a lot. But I'm home. When they call me, I go there and stuff like that. The main part is that I see that the people are happy when they're playing games, and I do a lot of books, and I do a lot of stuff. I know a lot of people, doctors, and politicians, and stuff like that. And it's really nice for me, at least for me, that when people are working, like doctors and stuff like that, our job is that when they come home, they have some nice fun time with board games, with comics, and stuff like that. And again, I don't really feel the big transition because drawing is all I'm capable of. I don't know to do anything else, literally.
Yep, same.
This means you're really good at it. That's what that means.
It's okay for now.
Did anyone else want to jump in? I know there was everybody wanted to go at once there. So.
Oh, it was about pivoting, right? Oh, between different projects. Was that the question?
Yeah. Sorry.
I like working on a lot of different things as an artist. Okay. So being able to pivot from one thing to the next thing is nice, and I have maybe like 2 or 3 different styles that are somewhat distinct, and I'm really glad I do because I think as an artist I get bored very easily. Not bored, sorry, clients everywhere.
We know what you meant.
You know what I mean? It's an energy that comes from switching and pivoting to different things, and as a person, I get a lot of energy from that. So having I don't know, like Erik, you said 2 or 3 projects live at a time, maybe. If
I'm responsible, that's
yeah.
If I'm irresponsible, more. Too many more.
Yeah. I would say it's 4 or 5 for me, and I like that interplay of having, before lunch starts, I'm doing something else, and after lunch, I'm doing something totally different. The headspace clearing is nice.
Yeah, I love working on different projects, and I get so excited hearing about the next one coming up. I want to work on everything myself, but obviously I can't do that, so I have to allocate. But I get so excited. People are passionate about these games, and they put in so much energy, and it comes through, and you want to make the best game you can possibly make with each one that comes across the table.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people seek us out individually for specific, things that are in our portfolio, subject matter, style, or whatever. But I think that's also what's been fun about board games specifically, is that a lot of the people that I've gotten the chance to work with are very open to, like in that first initial part of the process where this is what the design is and maybe what the tone is supposed to be like. And I can say, well, hey, I've had this thing in the background that I've been really excited about trying that has to do with this one particular like era of art or stylistic flourish or whatever it is. And I can bring that up and usually it's been like, yep, sure, go for it. And that's really fun because like the one that you mentioned, Yukon Airways, it's like I haven't used that palette real like I don't know that much kind of like 80s-y 90s like early 90s kind of purple, pink, yellow like that's
it's
not
so
something
good.
I had a whole lot of, but it was really like that was a part of the tone or the it's supposed to sit in that time period. So yeah, I don't know, that's definitely
cool.
one of the most fun parts of it is really like working with the designer and whoever's producing the project to kind of find something that definitely has a little bit of an overlap with things that I've done before, so they know what's coming, but also something that's interesting and different for me. So yeah, like Kwanchai said, so we don't get bored.
That's important.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what are visual assets? I know when I spoke to some of you on a separate call, just trying to get to know you a little bit. What are visual assets? Where does that fall? What are the steps to making them? And now there are people probably listening who are like, oh, I know what that is. And if you do, feel free to pop it in the chat so we see how smart you are. But everybody on the panel, tell me. I don't know, and I can't see the chat. So what does that mean?
It's almost like transferring the matrix over. You have like the game developer who has the game, and you have to take their ideas and make it so everyone else understands it and sees it and loves it. So it's every little icon, every illustration, every logo, every drawing. Yeah.
Okay. And then a question I have for you, and this is coming down to people, so we have to be cognizant of color blindness and things like that when we do games. When you are, given those challenges that you have to say, hey, we need to make sure that is adjusted in a game, is that something that you are thinking about already? Color palettes, coming back to what Erik was talking about, that you choose, is that something that you have a say in? And I guess your overall say, what is your overall say in the direction of the art of the game? I'm asking the hard questions tonight.
I mean, that's one of the things, again, like Quantai has mentioned earlier, is having a nice graphic designer on hand. It's like, I love it when someone else can say, this is our color palette, or this is, your illustration needs to live on top of this flat color or that flat color and that sort of thing. Because then I can say, okay, if it needs to be like this, can I add this sort of thing that'll make it look nicer, maybe, but it isn't going to interrupt that legibility or color blindness, being colorblind friendly and that sort of thing. So
for sure.
Yeah, we'll actually test the color palette, and sometimes usually we have the graphic designer choose a color palette, but I think in some occasions we've had the illustrator go ahead and say, hey, what color palette are you working with? And then we'll test it on our end from a graphic design standpoint and see if it's working. But I think we kind of work together on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it goes for other things too. Like, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I think now we're on the stands. Go ahead, Mito. You go ahead.
I usually get the brief. I draw and I give the drawings to the Anita. If it is okay, it is okay. If it's not, I would draw it. Stuff like that. I was luckily till now, so I hope I'll manage. Maybe I have match the colors in the right moment, not specifically, but I have luck with the colors.
Yeah.
I think that the more that, like, when the project comes my desk as an illustrator, the more things that are nailed down solid in terms of like, this is exactly how large this piece is and this is where it goes. This meeple is, and we need this screen print on it, and it has to be in this set of colors. When that's all set and done, when it comes to me, then I can just run free in this cage that's been provided for me by the project manager or graphic designer. And that's where an artist wants to be. You want to know, like, what's the size, what's the theme, what's the deadline. That's it, and and then just hand off after that.
Yes, I agree.
Because there's always like a timeline, and it's like we don't have time to mess around. We want to make sure if we're messing around, it's because we're exploring different solutions and different illustrations or characters or whatever. Like we don't want to waste time trying to figure out sizes and things like that. And even designing sizes or whatever it is, items like, for gameplay, like, is it going to be in your hand? Like, are you going to see the detail up close while you're playing the game? Or are you going to see it across the table? Does it have to be viewable by everyone around the table? So we have to take all that into consideration as far as like sizing things. And that goes for the graphic designer and the illustrator.
Okay. And on average, how long does it take? Well, I guess this is more a question for you, Anita. You probably know this. Like, how long from start to finish to kind of get the game, okay, we're done, and then how long does the illustrator have within that time frame to kind of finish their pieces? And I mean, any of you can jump in on that. I know Anita kind of works from the start. So
it depends on the game. If it's just a card game, there might be a lot of illustrations for the cards, but if there's like a lot of different size components, like there's just so many different game types, but typically it's about 2 months, I want to say, is probably our average.
Yeah, I agree with
that's
that.
actually
From
shorter
start,
than I thought it
from
would
the time the art descriptions are ready for the illustrator to the time the illustrator gives us their final illustrations. That's probably about 2 months, and then the graphic designer has to take their time to do their part.
Yeah,
right. Yep,
which is like an additional few weeks.
Whenever I get a deadline, I try to prolong it because you have to play some games, video games.
I'm with you. I think that's a great idea.
That deadline.
Main part for me is to do the art. I don't see the dates. I'm trying to do everything in the deadlines.
Yeah, Alicia.
I don't succeed in anything, but I'm doing my best. There are days when you can draw a lot, and there are days when you really, really don't want to draw.
Sure. And when you're creative people, you need
deadline.
to, this is not a good time for me. You're not in a good space. It's like baking. You have to be in a good space. Otherwise, it doesn't turn out nice. I know. It's a really weird comparison, but it's true. I'm a baker.
Humidity is wrong. I'm not drawing.
Right? That's it.
But you haven't, Mandy, you clearly haven't met our operations manager, Alicia. She lays down these deadlines for us. I see them more as guidelines, but she swears they're hard deadlines that we have to meet.
The artistic mind speaking. The artistic mind says, well, this is where it is, but, we're line steppers a little bit. So we need to maybe extend it if our mind is not into it. I 100% get that.
And then time gets used up in different ways too, because I feel like usually with most games that I've worked on, it's always been cover art first. And it shouldn't take the longest because there might be 30 cards or something like that in addition. But it feels like it always takes the longest because so many other decisions about the color palette, the tone, everything is being decided in that image. And then everything else kind of spirals or snowballs from there, I guess would be the better analogy. So it's like a lot of decision making up front. And that's when you really nail down. There's a lot of back and forth with the art director and in defining how this is going to work, how it's going to look, and then letting it kind of bleed into everything else.
Box covers are like the beacon that is going to attract a lot of initial interest in, like, do I pick this up off the shelf? Do I stop over this table and look at it? And it's definitely takes way longer on it because you are as concerned as the publisher, as the author, in making sure that is the thing. I mean, it does determine a lot of the other parts of the project. So often, like you're saying, Erik, we start there, and it's cool to see. Like, also, it's kind of a tangent, but board game artists, tabletop artists, are still kind of a small cadre of people. Mm-hmm. So when you see a new cover and it's really good, and you just like curse yourself silently that that it's so good because it's this feeling like I personally know a lot of the artists that are working in tabletop, like, because I met them at conventions or whatever. And so to see them move the industry forward a little bit with something just freaking awesome is a really cool feeling. It's both like a competitive challenge in a way, and it's also, it moves board games as art forward, and I think that's, I don't know any other industry, but I feel like that's really something special about our industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was really fun about walking around Gen Con last year for that reason. Was like you get this broad level view of like, these are all of the new games that are coming out this year on big posters behind every booth. And you can kind of see like, that one over there is really interesting and is a totally new voice. And yeah, it's like, oh, I'm going to follow their Instagram right now because it's just like, I'm always really curious to see something else that feels, it feels very different than a lot of things that I'm associated to.
Yeah. Right. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And for Renegade, I'll say the great thing about Renegade is that we don't limit ourselves to illustrators with experience in tabletop games. Like, we definitely will source anybody who fits our style and theme and has amazing talent. So we will go after anybody outside of the game industry, and it makes it so much more rich and opens up the doors for illustrators who didn't even have a clue about gaming, and now they're interested in gaming too. So it's really fun.
Oh, it's interesting to make that connection. Yes, exactly. I have a strange question for you all. And I think some of you I've asked already. Do you preview your work before you kind of make it finalized? Like, when you go to a movie screening, they've put it out just to kind of see maybe, is it good? Did we do the right things? And if it's not, they maybe let's go back to the drawing board, cut, fix. Do you have your own group that you kind of say, I'm doing this thing, and what do you think? And get feedback that way? Or it's like, nope, you do it, you hand it in, and then they decide. How does that work?
I'll say something to that. I feel like if by any means that will never happen ever, then I prefer that if it can never go in front of any kind of committee, except the ones that are on the project, that is the best as an artist, right? I'm not saying as that's the final answer, but in terms of just art, committees are so dangerous in terms of like squashing my creative spirit. And I do my best to be as professional as possible and take feedback at all times. But man, that's a hard one when you're working past on a different hand and it comes back to you. Because inevitably, the more people you add to that committee, there's going to be comments from all over the place. And honestly, with board games, because essentially when you boil it down to its very base, a board game is the designer of the mechanics, the publisher, and you, and the graphic designer to some extent. So it's really like 3 or 4 people that are the most important people. And if you can get it right, you can get this like specific vision that really commands table presence, has a great game mechanic that works within that. And I feel like too many people having an opinion on that can really dilute it. That's not to say that feedback from a greater group isn't important to make sure a game, is right for the time and for where we are as an industry. But it's feedback is a tough one for when it's on a larger scale.
Sure. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And especially like feedback in that professional context, because I know I'll seek out, friends to just be like, please, I've stared at this for 4 days straight. Can you look at this so I'm not missing anything like blatant? Because I know that makes a difference in the process of making it, to be able to not look at it for a day before sending it in, and then look at it just to see, those things you become blind to through the process of making it. But it's because it can be super duper solitary kind of working on these things.
And even in graphic design, I find that when I'm art directing a project, it's such a different angle than when you're in it working on it firsthand. Like, I won't see things that I would normally see when I'm art directing somebody else. Like, it's a different place because you have to get outside your head.
I usually show it to my wife and my kids because, I don't show it to anybody else.
Right.
And if they say it's okay, it's probably okay. My only concern is when I work the dimensions right, and I'm using this rubber ruler because I have old Photoshop on my computer, and I can manage to get the print size right, and Control plus, Control minus till I get, and then I will check it, and if it's okay. As I was working posters and billboards and stuff like that, you taking in mind that somebody is going to look at the box from 1 meter and stuff like that. And if it looks nice, it's okay. And again, if my wife and kids like it, if they don't have anything to add to the cover and stuff like that, I think it's okay. And of course, the art director and the company.
I think that's good
my
person
focus group. Yes,
but they'll be honest with you. I mean, generally, your family,
yes.
they'll tell you, and that's what you want.
If it sucks, they will tell me it sucks. So the problem is, at least with my kids, that they really like monsters and stuff like that. So everything I send to them, they usually like it. So the kids are great. So I trust on them.
Oh. I love it. I think that's the best audience ever. And I have a question for the chat while we're still talking here. And again, I can't see it. I know we've got Chris behind the scenes who can see it. But have you ever just bought a game based on art? You're like, yeah, I don't know anything about this game, but hey, that game looks awesome because the art is awesome. So I bought it. I'm curious. Have you ever done that? And if so, what was the game that you bought based just on art? So just throw that out there. It's always fun for discussion because I know I've done that with actually a lot of your games that are on this panel here. So I'd be curious to know if I'm the only one.
Yes,
oh,
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I bought Root from Cedar. Is it Cedar
Root
Games?
Awesome.
Yeah, it's
Leader?
gorgeous. Leader, thank you. Beautiful. It's beautiful, and it's really complicated. And I thought that was genius to make it insidiously cute. And then you open it up, and I was committed to playing it because it was so enjoyable to look at. And it was really, it was a lot of fun. But I have a very small board game library though, so relatively speaking, yeah.
Absolutely.
I have a lot, so I can't say that. You do? You have?
I'm buying. I don't have much games that I haven't drawn, but I usually buy games with minis. And because I like toys, yes, and as I do with my games, I usually open them once. Hey, this is great because it's the thrill of the hunt. When you're waiting for the postman to come with comics and games and stuff like that. And I usually buy stuff from the comic books artists or from certain subjects. As you see, I have a lot of Lord of the Rings stuff, so I do have a couple of those. Because John Howe and I don't know who the artist is on the other, but I really do like the art. I have the Hellboy because Hellboy is stuff.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
I love Adrian Smith from his Warhammer days, so the Chronicles of Hate and stuff like that because I have the comics too. So I usually buy things based on the art. I do have a lot of comics from the languages I do absolutely don't understand. I'm trying to buy comics from everywhere, and I usually do it for the art. It's something like when I'm watching movie before I sleep, not today because I will go direct to sleep. When you're watching the movie you have watched 20 times without subtitles, you know what they're talking about. And again, I would like to have the books for my colleagues, and I will see to it first thing when they come, when I have when this is over and the shop in the Skopje town, which is capital here, when they get those games, I will probably buy them because I like Erik art because it's comic book stylish, and your art is. I would like to hang it on the walls,
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
He's making art, My stuff is character design based. Erik's art is comic book based, but he's making art, and I really like his stuff.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. And I have somebody from the chat has answered my question. So Karen C says, I backed STEM Heroes based on the art. Can I tell you? So did I. And oh, there you go. Someone said, Brian W says Root as well, and Lord of Hellas. I actually played that one. The art was pretty nice. Okay, so here we go. Cheryl O says, Mandi, art is a big influence on my Kickstarter impulses. Tidal Blades was one. So that actually had very nice art as well. So I'm right there with you. So I get it. So that's awesome. See, I'm not the only one, and you're not all the only ones, that you and I could hear it when the Mija was talking. You have that passion for certain things, and when you get attached to someone's style or creativity, you really want to support it, and then you want to buy it or have it as part of your collection. So I can completely understand that.
Yeah, and you could call it marketing, and that's kind of dry and boring. But like, I really do think that like there's something that comes through in the art that communicates like the opinion of the game or like the attitude of the game that you can really immediately connect with. Like I know what I'm getting myself into when I play a game that has Micho's art, because it's like it has a grit to it, it has a heft to it. It's really and it's. So I don't know. I think that's really, really fun, especially that board games has such a huge variety of things that Root can be on the same shelf as any of the games that we've worked on. It's just that they're very. It's a very broad spectrum, and they're
I think I remember it's not even like 5 or 6 years ago when board games didn't have to have good art and they would sell, right? I mean, like the industry has changed so quickly over the last like 8 years. And when I got into board games in like 2000, there was like one game for every mechanic. You bought Puerto Rico and you bought like Power Grid, and like that's it. And to see games so quickly move from that to the point now where you can't really survive as a publisher with like lower tier or whatever you want to call it, like amateurish art. It has to look good, and it has to have zing to it, and I think that's really cool. I feel like the reason I got work early on was because just as an illustrator I was going to cons and the artwork was still at a point where like, oh, maybe someone's cousin's dad was doing the art or something, and it wasn't at a certain professional level where the bar is a lot higher even just from last year to this year, and so I feel like it's cool to see. I feel like a lot of people take for granted that board games look as good as they do now, when even just a couple years ago, a lot of things that were really good games had just kind of like whatever art, but now it can be such a focus. The visual thing can be such a focus. I think it's really cool. I love games, by the way, and I feel like I
know, right? It's like I feel like you had to say that. I do love games.
I feel like I was a board gamer before I went to art school. Like I like had a history degree before, and I was like getting into board games, and then I got into board games, got an art degree, and then somehow melded that with being an illustrator for board games. But like board games like still give me the the fizz. Like just I love opening up new games and seeing games with amazing art. And actually, speaking to the question, the original question, if a game has like not that good art, it's really hard for me to play, even if it's a really like everyone loves the game. Really hard for me to play a game that's like they obviously didn't throw resources at it, and there's lots of reasons why they might not, but it's hard as an artist to play a game that doesn't look good.
Listen, I am right there with you on that one. And we have Nate Parker who wants to comment, and some of you may recognize some of the games here, referring to have I bought games based on the art? Yes, I have bought several games just based on the art. Raiders of the North Sea, Flip Ships, Root, Samurai Spirit, Gorus Maximus, ... a whole bunch. So that's quite the list, Nate, and impressive.
Nice.
So thank you for sharing that. What about you, Anita?
Oh, I like I don't even remember who the artist is, but Koo. I just love the character. I like a lot of character drawings. That's just a personal thing. I know their environments are really important, and we do a lot of environmental kind of games. But when I feel like there's a connection with a character on the art in the game, like I feel like I'm able to suspend my disbelief and believe that we're playing with these characters. And so if they're beautifully done, I love that. And I will not buy a game, even if it has amazing reviews, if it has bad art and bad design. Like if it has a bad logo, I don't even look at it. I can't even do it.
But it's what you see, right? It's the first thing you see, and if it turns you off, it's not going to really make you want to enjoy it. No, I totally get that. And we have another comment from Cheryl O. I loved the intention that was given to Wendake to be not only beautiful, but historically accurate. And yes, I have played it. I don't know if any of you have played it. That is the first thing I look for in a game, especially if you're drawing off actual peoples or actual ethnicities, or things like that. I always look for that, have they incorporated the culture to the art and to the story? And Wendake does do that quite well. So Cheryl, very nice pick. Thank you so much for that comment. I feel like now I've got you all warmed up now. I want to come back to our concept to cardboard. So in a Cole's Notes, I don't know if everybody knows what that means, a very summarized version for everybody, some people maybe who have just popped in, and anybody can give their perspective on this. We get the game, you get the designers, the concept, the ideas. Walk us through now the steps to get it to the end. So anybody can fill in the blanks. Who wants to start?
I'll jump into that one. Yeah. So for me, like when Anita sends me an email, it's kind of like, okay. So looking at what are the assets, what's required, how big, how many, all those sorts of things, and then I feel like typically I'm always diving right into gathering references because I love being able to. In that initial conversation, get something on the table that we could both look at. If I've drawn it, great. If someone else has drawn it, okay. But just to say, this is what I'm thinking of going direction-wise, visually, we can do this and add a little bit of that and maybe a little bit of this, and just really get that conversation rolling immediately. Because those are the things that, like, especially then as you go into working on whatever the first piece of art is, usually like the cover, those things are super, super important because I'll just have them all kind of spread out and be stealing colors from them and stuff like that as I go.
Yeah. That's exactly the same as me. Especially starting with the reference and getting the feeling of it down by just taking color moods from completely unrelated pictures sometimes, or like a poster, alongside reference of like correct costume or correct, buildings or whatever. That sets up my brain. Sometimes I'll start a project a month ahead just with looking at, just gathering a pool of like mood imagery to get the feeling. And then nailing down that cover really does set the tone for everything else. So getting that sketched up and over. So like for most people, I think for all artists, it's going to be rough thumbnails, and then notes, and then a revised sketch, and then notes, and then final. And then it's always delivered in a digital format. Usually it's a layered PSD that the graphic designer can like futz around with. Yeah.
I try to do it as simply as possible. I get mail, I draw something. I don't use much of reference because I'm too lazy to do that. When I have to draw a lion, I will go to Google and lion. And, I'll try to make it look like a lion. And, I will send it to the subject. And then is it okay? And if he says it's okay, victory for me. I will have more time to do more other stuff today. And again, because we are living in relatively different time zones, I actually don't, as you can see from my drawings, I don't use a lot of sketches because I use I lose some of that spontaneity when I'm drawing, too tight. I used to do that, but I don't like it now. I like my drawings to look as dirty as possible in the, brushing way. So, again, when I'm sending art to somebody to see, when I do cards, I'm speaking about the cards. I usually do the whole card because if I do a sketch and I send it to you over there because the time zones and stuff like that, I will have to wait till another day to get a response and stuff like that. So it's easier for me to do the entire art, and if it's okay, it's great. If not, I will redo it. Because again, I really like to draw because we are making magic here, and you are making people happy. If the cover sucks, I will make it another. You will swear you will write a long mail, and before you press enter, you will erase everything and you will write okay with smiley. because at the end of the day, we are making games, we are making fun stuff, and they should be fun. As for the people who are playing them, and for us too, I'm living from this, and I really try to make my job as easily and as fun as possible. And again, you have a good days, you have a bad days, but I do try to make this everything works for everybody, including my family and the people who are buying games and my colleagues and random people walking in the street and stuff like that.
Oh, that's good.
So I try to keep it as simple as possible. Covers are usually little, more delicate because it's the front store, the thing that is selling the game. Actually, I usually like to do more interesting stuff. But if you have a game with the librarian who is reading the books, you can draw it with dragons breathing fire on the books, and he is defending it with magic because it will be stupid. But I would like to draw dragons, but
maybe not in the library. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it's a job. It's a job. You have to do it.
Absolutely.
I will look for the reference for the librarian. Librarian, middle century with the books.
I can relate to that. Yeah, I usually have some sort of ulterior motive of like I would really love to be able to slip a astronaut is usually the answer for me. Astronaut into this if at all possible. And so there's or a detective. Those are my I have certain loves for genre. So, or I think like when we were working on the Anita, when we were working on Terror Below, I really just wanted to paint a truck with like a certain kind of sunset light on it in bright blue and yellow. And it's like, that's all I really wanted. I mean, the sandworm was fun too, but also I mostly wanted a truck.
I love the focus there. Exactly.
Awesome.
It did. It looks amazing. And before you say anything, I'm going to jump in with a comment from a fellow illustrator who you probably all know. Ian O'Toole is in the chat. Hi, all. Good morning from Australia. Great group of people on this panel. So hello, Ian. Thanks for joining us. I also love your artwork. So I think we all are familiar with it. So thank you so much for joining. Awesome. And anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Did you want to add anything to this train of thought we were going on?
I was going to say, I'm definitely not as good as the Miko. I definitely do sketches and we do a lot of like comps as graphic designers, like for logos and stuff, or layouts, even for the user interface. I typically try to do 2 to 3 comps sketches and then go over it with the development team and all powers that be and try to pick a direction. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's good. Oh,
one thing that
wait.
I want to do.
Before you go, Concha, there was something in the chat. There we go. Cheryl O, and this is for Micho. Dragons make everything better.
Absolutely.
There you go. All right, nice. I'm sorry, Concha. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's fine. I think one thing that makes board games pretty cool is that there's a lot of different places to put energy into as an artist. Like there's the board, there's a cover, there's pieces, there's standees, there's like maybe a player screen, and each of those has a different kind of a purpose. And you can make the table an experience, by on all these different surfaces, which I think is really. I was just thinking about that when Micho was talking. It's a lot of fun. Honestly, it's a job that's a lot of fun because there's so many areas to play in. It's not just like sequential work like a comic book or like progress work that just is hidden in the final movie, for example. It's like a 1-to-1 ratio, you putting in this energy and someone opening a box and experiencing that energy and seeing the thing on the table. And that's really rewarding as an artist, I think, at least for me as a board game artist.
Yeah. That's
and even in
do you see this in social media? And kind of tying into what you're saying, because I know for myself, when I'm talking about a board game, I always try and tag the artist if I have them or, something like that. Is that kind of how you get that vibe or?
It's happening. Well, I get that from cons especially, and also I get that also just from opening my own game or games that of artists that I love and opening it up and just experiencing that. I think more and more people are recognizing that artists are a big part of the board game process. And actually, I think it's kind of almost unfair. Like I do get tagged sometimes, and it's always flattering. It's a reason to keep going on as a person, But also like. Artists are being really like celebrated as creators in this world too, alongside the designer of the game as well. And I think that's a good thing, but also I feel like as an artist, I have an easier job in just like sort of making it look really awesome. But the biggest job is like nailing down the mechanics. And I feel like I get to sort of soak in all the revelry of a final product, even though there's a lot of hands that like make it happen, you know? Anyway, I don't know. I feel bad sometimes when a designer is more celebrated.
Yeah, that's true. And before anyone jump, Cheryl's just on fire tonight here. The colors of Dinosaur Island instantly inspire fun. So, Quancha, you did Dinosaur Island, did you not?
Mm-hmm.
I did, and in fact, I saw a comment like a couple years ago. I think it was on like the board game subreddit, and it was someone said like those Dinosaur Island colors, right? Because they're very wild, and honestly, like
they're awesome. I love it.
Career. I love it, and we're doing more stuff. I'm working on more Dinosaur Island stuff right now, actually. But someone said, someone's comment was that Taco Bell, go get them Taco Bell colors, and I thought that was really funny.
Oh, no.
They're definitely Taco Bell colors. And
really?
I recently
I didn't think that at all. I thought Varney. Do you know the brand Varney?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I'm super Canadian right here. Okay, see, Anita knows. That's what I thought of it. That reminded me of my childhood. So you know what? Forget Taco Bell. Varney all the way, and it's awesome.
Well, I really love Taco Bell. I have to like stop myself from buying it, so it actually really made me feel quite good.
Okay.
But yeah.
We don't have Taco Bell here, so I don't know what you're talking about.
We'll have to send you a picture.
You're not
now
missing
so you
much.
can compare.
I have seen it in the movies and stuff like that, but you know.
Okay, not the actual. I think somebody else wanted to jump in. Sorry, before I jumped in with a comment there.
I was going to jump on what Quancha said about how about board games kind of being different from something that's sequential like comics or animation or something like that, because it does kind of it is a really interesting, like, the way the art functions when it's spread out on a table. It kind of compounds, and I don't know, it's like you get more, like, you can look at the cover and it will tell you a lot of what you need to know about the game. But I love opening up a box and starting to play a game, and then constantly being like hit with another like shot of that like aesthetic kind of juice that comes like just by like drawing another card or whatever, and you get to just like really examine something, and it brings you deeper and deeper with every little piece. And so that's really fun, especially when they have, you know, like custom figurines, like to bring up Terra Volo again, Anita, like the custom meeples that you guys made of the cars are great. They're so good. Those sorts of things are just like
Studios. Yeah, Cold Castle Studios did the graphic design on that, and they did an amazing job. I was going to say that as a graphic designer, since we get all the pieces and we're essentially one of the last people to touch a game before it goes to press, like, it's so fun to be able to work in little like surprise packages. So like thinking about how a person opens up that box and then you see the rim of the bottom box and having contrast against the top lid. So just thinking about that in presentation and how the experience of just opening up the box and then what do you see first sitting on top, like, you know, we think about those things as well. So as you're unveiling this game, it's really an experience just to open it up and see what's inside.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Christmas all the time. I love it.
Yeah. Sometimes it has little things in there.
Well, I mean, that's even better. You know, gamers love their Easter eggs and fun things like that. So, you know, if you can make it harder for them to find, it's like a game. So I think it's amazing. And I do have another question, and I don't know if anyone's asked this in the chat. So in the chat, you should be thinking of your questions because we're coming up to that time soon. And I don't know if this is the correct terminology. Please correct me if I'm wrong. What medium do you use when you're kind of creating your art? Like, do you do it via like a computer? Because I have a friend who does graphic design and stuff, and he illustrates on a computer. I have some that paint, some that sketch. I don't know. Sorry if I'm super ignorant to that. I do makeup, so it's different. So do you do it in a certain way before it kind of goes to where it needs to go? Oh, and there you go. Literally, someone said, is the artwork generally done digitally these days, or what mediums do you use? Cheryl, you're on fire. We're in sync today. So there's the question.
Yeah, for me, it starts on paper, but it always ends up digital for me. So yeah, I'm painting in Photoshop, but yeah, for the thumbnails and stuff like that, or my own thinking, I think faster on paper. So it usually starts with ink or pencil on a page, and then goes to Photoshop.
Yeah, same for me. It always ends up in Photoshop. I specifically I go like 10% of the beginning of the project I work on Procreate on the iPad Pro, and then transfer that to a Photoshop file, and then work on Photoshop and finish it up. If it's a painting, then I'll paint the whole thing about 80%, and then scan that in and finish it in Photoshop. I think in general, my goal of the workflow is just to somehow save my back health so I can live past 36 with some kind of spine still. Feel like I don't know about you. I just hate sitting down in a chair, but that's like my whole life. So the more I can take some work to a coffee shop or go in the backyard or something, the better.
Yeah.
I work mainly digital. I do sketches when I speak on the phone, and I don't speak a lot on the phone. When you're chatting with somebody, you're drawing something, stuff like that. I use Photoshop, but I use the really old one, Photoshop 7 from 2001 or 5. I don't know when it was, because it works nice for me. And when I was buying Cintiqs and stuff like that, the main concern for me was that will it be compatible with those, and it is. So I'm mainly using it. It's practically my only program I have. I have a couple of brushes. I do stuff digitally. I have a couple of Cintiqs. One of those is Companion, on which I was thinking that way, that when I go to coffee and stuff like that, when you go to hang out with friends and stuff, that's we'll drink coffee and we'll talk stuff, and I will draw. Or when I'm finished drawing in my studio, when I go upstairs with my family, I will draw stuff like there. But it is extremely stupid to think that way, because you have work here, and if you take work with the family and the friends, it's extremely stupid. So yes, I work mainly digitally, and I'm doing my best. As he mentioned, I'm trying to save my backs. I try to draw with this new Cintiq. I try to draw standing, but I'm using my keyboard. And if I put my keyboard on the Cintiq, I won't see this part, which is the tools are. And if I put it on the desk, I won't manage to press the buttons. So I'm stuck with sitting. I may rise it like this, and it was nice because my back is on the chair and I can draw like this. Right. But after a couple of hours, you have a pain in the arm. So we are on the medical account. I think that how do you call those?
Your abs, like the abdomen.
Yes, you're really old and you put it to watch your backs and keep it warm.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, those bands. I know
we are making art. We are enjoying. We are making magic. But there are certain prices we have to pay. It's not like we are working in the mine. We are making stuff. We are taking stuff out of the ground. But yes, it has its.
Micho, I have a suggestion for you. I've had that same problem of like where to put the keyboard. I bought a thing. It's called Cintweak. So CINTWEAK, and it's a plastic kind of like tray thing that sits, and you like Velcro strap it onto the bottom of your Cintiq, and it holds the keyboard off the edge of the screen, and it's nice. Because then you can stand up or whatever. So yeah, because I've had that same problem.
You're right, but when you, I really think that you have that same problem when you're drawing by hand in the sketchbook. The other hand, in my case, the left one, I usually press the non-existent Control Z or Control S every time. So if you have a certain way of working. If I put my keyboard here, it will be very strange, and I will be, angry all the time, and I will rip it up and I will put it back to the screen.
We don't want that. We don't want that.
I will buy comics or games with those money.
Should have known. Anita, did you have anything to add? I know it might be a different. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I usually measure everything in comics and toys. Why should I
sense
buy
that.
this? And yes.
Nothing wrong with that at all, by the way. Anita, I think you were going to say something there.
Yeah, graphic designers work almost very similar to how illustrators start anyway. But for me personally, I definitely like sketching out just to kind of get all the bad ideas out first. And then something good will come along and then that into into Photoshop. And we use Illustrator and design a lot for print stuff anyway.
Okay. So definitely, I didn't realize it was so. Even when I write, I'm old school. I write, I still write in cursive and I write on paper before I put it on the computer. So I thought it was the same in the art world where you kind of sketch it out there and then kind of transferred it, to your Photoshop. But I didn't realize that it was technology was so incorporated now into that world. So it's very interesting to hear. Oh, here we go. Ian O'Toole says Illustrator's shoulder is definitely an issue, and there's like a little kind of face there. So I'm thinking that across the board, yes, it does seem to be a problem. Take care of yourselves.
We use rakia here. It's alcohol drink. You can, when something hurts you, you can spread it around. We use old medicines here in Macedonia.
If it works, you gotta use it.
Yeah,
we have more.
You gotta do stuff with the things you have here around you.
Right.
Right.
Okay, we have some questions. Oh my goodness! So I think we've kind of I've subtly transitioned us into questions without you knowing. But Karen T says, "Do you get annoyed when you have to make too many iterations to a sketch?" Does everyone know what that means? Okay. Oh, yes. Okay.
Micha was saying that he likes to retain the energy of his sketches. That's definitely a thing. Like the energy from the initial idea, it dies slowly as you add color, as you add rendering, as you keep going on something. And I when I went to art school, one of the things that I was hammered in over and over was you sketch out so you get the bad ideas out. Like we were told that a lot. Like you sketch it out, and then so that all your sort of like middling ideas kind of get out on the paper and you see them, and it helps inform you move forward with a better sketch. But man, I just want to do one sketch these days and just like nail it on the first try. And I don't know if that's laziness, but I want to say it's because I want to keep the energy of the sketch. That's why I don't want to do more.
It's laziness. It's laziness.
Nice.
It is.
Yeah, I've kind of learned to deliberately make my sketches, leave them sloppier, because as I clean them up, I'm not erasing the energy as much. I have to more interpret the sketch, because if I make the sketch too clean and too refined, then I will definitely hate the final. It will definitely be dead in comparison.
Right. Okay, we have another question from Nate Parker. Have you ever had a really great piece of art that just doesn't work for the project you are on?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about it. Maybe.
Again, after all, this is a job as any, and we can talk about the art and energy and stuff like that. But if the publisher or producer doesn't like it, there is not much of. If you go to the subject of, you did this Roman legion, in those century the helmets were not like that. You counterattack with you will take history books and you will show them, look in this book, they have like this, and they have, I don't know how do you call them, but it gives you a space to debate on the subject. But if the publisher or the art director or whoever tell you this, okay, this drawing sucks, I want you to draw another one, there is not a much place for the debate there. So again, sometimes when I draw dragon, which is awesome, for a game with the bunnies, it probably won't fit.
Okay. And going into that vein, we have another question that's asking about, do you have any specific reference sources? So thank you, Tabletop Bellhop. Do you have any specific reference sources? So you can tie that into the last question if anybody wants to add to that.
Google.
I wanted to say that I've had some covers that have been like nixed because a committee decided, or someone like along the line thought we need to do a whole different cover. But that usually only happens with like some publisher that has a lot of money for a project, because like that's stretching out the schedule and that's budget for an entirely a new cover, and that's almost never the case. And with good communication, that basically never happens. And to answer your other question, yeah, Google is your friend. Google is your friend.
Yeah,
I mean, I've done.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right. It basically have the same experience. Like ideally, if I feel like if I have done my job well and communicated it through the sketches clearly and everything like that, then there shouldn't be those moments of like throw it all out. Sometimes that happens because of something with the project. Like I've had jobs where a element of the cover was decided actually that's not in the game anymore, so put something else there, please. That's happened before. But yeah, ideally that sort of thing doesn't happen after it's all said and done. But yeah, I definitely, for reference stuff, it's the same. It's the Google and stuff like that. But I've definitely like put a sheet over my head and taken a photo really awkwardly if I need to like get just a little bit of reference on like how does this drape or what, get that angle correct and that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah, I have some embarrassing photos on my phone in that way.
Oh yeah, I have tons of those. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
What about you, Anita?
I was going to say Google, Pinterest, Instagram, like just anything online. Bookstores. I mean, not so much here, but I used to do daily, day trips to the bookstore and just see what was in the bookstore because it's such a wide range of things there. Inspiration, art museums, like just anything creative with a lot of different variety. Definitely. Yeah.
Good sources. We have another question here from Karan. How many drafts of a sketch do you usually make before it is final?
I feel like it's usually I deliver like 2 to 3 on any given thing. Well, especially with the covers, I feel like things that are more significant, bigger, more important. It's like by the time, so with the cover, it's like 2 to 3 in black and white, and then there's the refined version with some color in there, and then you go to final. Whereas like with the boards, or like with boards or character sketches and stuff like that, those are pretty. Like if you're drawing 36 characters, then you kind of just draw 36 characters and then and talk with the art director about like, okay, this one should be more of this, less of that, and make those changes as you go, rather than doing variations on every single one. Just because they're not as high, they're not on the outside of the box for one. And yeah.
Okay. We have another. Does the one want to jump in? Yeah, go ahead. Micho?
When I draw cards,
Sorry, Micho, go and then Anita.
Okay. When I'm starting to work for somebody, I do some sketches for the cards, couple of sketches and stuff like that, final art. And after some period, when we gain trust that he knows that I will do the stuff and stuff like that, I usually send him the final set. And as I said, it's easier for me to do illustration and wait for another day to tell me if it's okay, which luckily for me, the most of them are. And for the cover, I usually, go forwards and stuff like that, sketches. I do the character and I send it. Do you like it? Yes, I will add background. We'll add one more character. It's a little more longer process because the cover is important. But for the cards, when we establish that trust that I can do this stuff. And as Erik said, if there are 36 characters, I will draw first 5, and you will have to believe me that I will deliver the next one. The rest of it.
It's a faith.
I think that's a good point about. I think that's a good point about trust. Like, I've been lucky to work with like publishers, over and over again. And once you have a sense of trust about what you can deliver, you don't need to go through as much iterations because you can know much more easily where a project's going. So, I personally, it's hard for me to work with someone I haven't met. Going to a lot of conventions, it's a lot easier to just meet all these publishers and folks that are going to work with you. And it's really hard now to work with someone that I haven't shook their hand or said hello, because it's just much more of a pleasant experience as someone who works from home by themselves, to work with people that you've, met. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we kind of end up thinking about it probably more in terms of budgeting our own time, like the cost of not communicating clearly with a sketch and then doing a cover that is going to require revisions and stuff like that is really expensive, because there's a lot of changes that could potentially need to happen. But if it's just a character card and it's one of 30 something, then relatively speaking, that change, if you go further, and the client trusts you and everything, you can go further and have less work to redo if something is not correct or needs to be changed.
Yeah.
Anita, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, I mean, same thing goes for the logos and the iconography in any game. We'll do sketches, sometimes up to 6 different versions, just because we get so excited about the different solutions that we're coming up with. If it's a game that's really widespread, sometimes we'll go too far on one direction. I mean, I've gotten so excited about a logo that is matching up with the illustration cover piece that I'll just keep going. Like for Gates of Delirium, I got so excited because it's a crazy game based on Cthulhu. And I did this crazy typography thing on it, and it wasn't even readable. But I was so excited, and I'm like, wait a minute, let me show the team. Okay, let's take a few steps back, and let's let me look at it with fresh eyes again. Sometimes you can get too far before showing everyone else. So it's usually, I love just showing just rough sketches, just even for the logo, just to make sure that it's in the ballpark.
Well, you're excited. You want to show your work. It totally makes sense. I get that. We have another question here. So this is from, oh, goodness gracious, I apologize if I pronounced this wrong, Mad Unky G. Have you ever taken over from another artist on a game? Ooh, hard-hitting question. Who wants to take that one on first? Any takers?
Not that I know of. I
okay.
Got that information. No.
Okay.
We don't like
not
to
on
share
a large
that.
scale. not on a large scale. It wasn't like, hey, this is not even started. Can you take it? But I did jump in really quickly one time just to make some fixes, because the original artist was no longer available. So they were like, "We just can you make this look more polished?" And so I've done that, but that's
okay,
not a substantial thing.
But that's okay. Yeah,
it's happened to me twice where a project was maybe 25% or halfway, and then for whatever reason, usually it's not a good thing, had to switch out for another artist. And both times, it is in the board game world, both times I personally knew the other artist that picked it up. And so it was a happy, it's still a happy thing because a friend artist was getting work, even though it didn't necessarily work out for me. And usually I don't know if publishers really know, the specific publisher didn't know that a lot of the tabletop illustrators talk and know each other. That was a funny happenstance. And in the end, it was fun.
Okay, so that's good. It had a happy ending. That's good. And we have this is going. So go ahead, Anita. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, sorry.
No, you're fine.
That there's been cases as a graphic designer, so we'll get the illustrations back. Illustrations are done. Now it's in our lap. And I've gotten illustrations where I have to manipulate them quite a bit to make them work, either because the gameplay changed, or the application is different now, or the size changed at the very end, something like that. And I hate this because it's like the trust thing, right, between the illustrator and the graphic designer. I've gotten work where like I've really had to change it before, where it probably resembles the original piece like by 50% even, just because we had to make some changes and make it work. At the end of the day, it has to be a functional game and it has to look good. So we do what we got to do.
Right, absolutely. And this is the final question. We are down to the last 3 minutes of this panel. And it's from James Brazel. James, hello. I see you quite a lot in these chats. Who is one of your favorite artists you enjoy or follow? And it can be in the board industry or outside of the industry. So, Anita, I'm going to start with you because I always seem to miss you, and I don't want to miss you on this last one.
There are so many.
I know, right? Don't worry. We won't judge you on who you pick.
Yeah, these are people mostly that I've worked with. I've had the fortunate luck to work with them because I really part of me I just love line work, and I love what illustrators do that is different from graphic design. So like Jackie Davis, Beth Sobel, even who else? I don't know. There's so many. I'm starting to blank out. But
that's okay. No, those are good.
Even illustrators that cross over from graphic design to illustration. Charlie Bink was amazing. He did both. Like he did graphic design and illustration. And everyone has their own style. So it's Dan Mora is amazing. We're working with Amy Wilkins now. She's incredible. I mean, it's just over the top. I just sit there and just I'm in awe.
No, and those are all
Amazing
great
work.
people. No, absolutely. Good selection. So who wants to go next? Micho, do you want to go next? Do you have one in your mind?
Yes. Present company, of course.
Of course.
Vincent Dutrat, Ian O'Toole. And again, I have to tell you that I'm relatively new to this business, So
sure.
I'm going when somebody tells that this game is great, and I search around it, and so that they are best in their business because they are best. Yeah. There is no question about it. I like Vincent Dutrat. I forgot the guy from the Roots. I really like his stuff because I like those cartoony and stuff like that. Kyle Adrian Smith, of course. And if I start with comics and illustration, it will probably be all night.
It'll be a long list.
Starting from Europe to Japan to, I don't know, United States and stuff like that. So again, I really like good drawings, and I really like to have as much of everything as possible. Comics, games, and everything.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's good to be well-rounded. So, no, that's amazing. And what about you, Erik?
I'm so bad at remembering names. I tend to draw a lot from old 1950s and 60s illustrators. That's kind of, and I guess I go through phases. But in terms of contemporary folks, just the top of my mind, I know Sergei Kolosov's illustration work has always been a big inspiration. He's a phenomenal painter. And then it's the same thing. I don't know a lot of. I'm relatively new to board games, so I pay attention to a lot of Drews Druzin poster illustration stuff. He's a big influence. Frank Frazetta is one that I've looked at a lot in the past, and 1950s and 60s illustrators like Gil Elfgren and Bob Peak and
Bob Peak, yeah, good one.
Yeah, Bob Peak. Bill Sienkiewicz is another one. It's yeah.
Okay, so some nice ones there. And finally, Kwon Chai, some favorite artists. And if you don't have lots, one is okay. What do you have for us?
I have a lot, for sure. I think especially for board games where the publisher decided to make one artist represent the whole product, that's a really cool endeavor. And there's a lot of names you've already said. Kyle Farron, who I really like everything Kyle does. Kyle and Ian O'Toole are probably the two people where I see a new cover and I'm just like, Jesus Christ! Like I cannot believe how good that is. It makes me very angry. Like, and that's a good sign, you know. It's like,
right.
And I think, yeah. So Kyle, Ian, Jackie Davis, Beth Sobel, and Lena and David Cassette are like, and the present company. I have Micho, I have all your games, and I have Fair Below.
I will buy all of your games now too. So Erik, you'll too.
We're raiding your store when this is over, Quante. Not gonna have any prints.
Fair Below came out. The Gen Con that Terra Below came out, that was the best cover at the whole con, personally.
It's very nice. Yeah, it's very, very
the oranges
nice.
And stuff. It was like, oh my god, it was so good. That, and also even like the cover for the expansion for it was good. You know, like it was just like a lot of thoughtful design. But yeah, those are the artists. I have a lot of other artists that aren't in board games that, you know, I just follow for my own personal sake. But yeah, they're really, it's really fun to have other artists that are doing a lot of repeat work in this industry, because it feels like, as disparate as these people are in different nations and countries, it feels like we're gunning for the same goal, and it's fun. I really like it.
Yeah, also because you get to see that kind of like continuity and development of like, seeing people's work change through different genres and everything like that. That's really fun.
Yeah.
So those are really nice. Ryan Lockett. Yes, Ryan Lockett does some great stuff. Very distinct.
I love it when, you know, one artist is just wrapping their hand around the whole thing, and he does a really good job on that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, a great listing. I know a lot of the ones you've mentioned are fantastic. And, you know, so kudos to all of you, because, you know, you really make us want to buy the games, right? So it gives us reviewers things to talk about. So that makes me very happy. So thank you, all of you, for joining us on the Concept to Cardboard panel. So thank you to Anita, the Micho, Erik Hitler, Quanchai Moria. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who has been watching for your fantastic questions and being so involved in our panel, even when we were talking about silly fun stuff. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you for joining us today. So have a great night, and we'll see you all later. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.